On the first day of school, Lexi woke early and staggered down the narrow hallway to the bathroom. One look in the mirror confirmed her worst fears. Her skin was pale, a little sallow even, and her blue eyes were puffy and bloodshot. She must have cried in her sleep again. She took a quick, lukewarm shower, careful not to waste her aunt's money. There was no real point in drying her hair. The waist-length black strands would curl and frizz and do whatever they wanted to, so she pulled it all into a ponytail and went back to her room. There, she opened her closet door and stared at the few articles of clothing she owned. There were so few choices. What did kids wear here? Would Pine Island be like Brentwood or the Hills, where kids dress like avant-garde fashion models? Or East LA, where rap star wannabes and grungeoids filled the classrooms? There was a knock at her bedroom door, so quiet Lexi barely heard it. She made her bed quickly and then opened a door. Eva stood there, holding a cotton candy pink sweatshirt with a rhinestone butterfly bedazzled onto the front. The kidney-shaped wings were purple and yellow and shamrock green. "I got this for you at work yesterday. I figured every girl should have something new to wear on the first day of high school." It was the ugliest thing Lexi had ever seen, better suited to a 4-year-old than a 14-year-old, but she loved it instantly. No one had ever bought her something special for the first day of school. "It's perfect," she said, feeling a tightening in her throat. She'd only lived with her aunt for 4 days, and every hour she felt a little more at home. It scared her, that settling in. She knew how dangerous it could be to start liking a place, a person. "You don't have to wear it if you don't want to. I just thought, I can't wait to wear it. Thanks, Eva." Her aunt gave her a smile so bright it bunched up her cheeks. "I told Mildred you'd like it."
"I do." Eva bobbed her head in a little nod and backed into the hallway, closing the door behind her. Lexi put on the pink sweatshirt and stepped into a pair of faded Target jeans. Then she filled her hand-me-down backpack with the notebooks, paper, and pens Eva had brought home from work last night. In the kitchen, she found Eva standing by the sink, dressed now for work in her blue Walmart smock, lemon-yellow acrylic sweater, and jeans, drinking coffee. Across the small, tidy space, their gazes met. Eva's brown eyes looked worried. "Mrs. Waters worked hard to get you into Pine Island High. It's one of the best schools in the state, but the school bus don't come over the bridge, so you'll have to take the county bus. Is that okay? Have I already told you all this?" Lexi nodded. "It's fine, Eva. Don't worry. I've been riding buses for years." She didn't add that she'd often slept on their dirty seats when she and Mama had nowhere else to go. "Okay, then." Eva finished her coffee and rinsed out her cup, leaving it in the sink. "Well, you don't want to be late on your first day. I'll drive you. Let's go." "I can take the bus." "Not on the first day. I got the late shift special." Lexi followed her aunt out to the car. As they drove toward the island, Lexi studied her surroundings. She'd seen all of this on maps, but those little lines and markings only told so much of the story. For instance, she knew that Pine Island was 12 miles long and 4 miles wide, that it was accessible by ferry to downtown Seattle and by bridge to mainland Kitsap County. On the Port George side of the bridge, the land was tribal. Pine Island, she saw now, was not. She could tell by the houses that the people who lived on the island were rich. The houses over here were practically mansions. They turned off the highway and drove up a hill to the high school, which was a collection of squat red brick buildings huddled around a flagpole. Like many of the schools Lexi had attended, Pine Island had obviously grown faster than expected. A collection of portables ringed the main campus. Eva parked in the empty bus lane and looked at Lexi. "These kids are no better'n you. You remember that." Lexi felt a rush of affection for this careworn woman who had taken her in. "I'll be fine," Lexi said. "You don't have to worry about me." Eva nodded. "Good luck," she said at last. Lexi didn't say that luck was useless at a new school. Instead, she forced a smile and got out of the car. As she waved goodbye, a school bus pulled up behind Eva and kids poured out of it.
Lexi kept her head down and started moving. She'd been the new girl often enough to know the tricks of the camouflage trade. The best tactic was to blend in, disappear. You did that by looking down and moving fast. Rule 1, never stop. Rule 2, never look up. By Friday, if she had followed this pattern, she'd just be one of the kids in the freshman class, and then she could try to make a friend or two. Although it wouldn't be easy here, what could she possibly have in common with these kids? When she made it to Building A, she double-checked her schedule. There it was, room 104. She merged into the crowd of students, all of whom seemed to know one another, and let their tide carry her forward. In the classroom, kids slid into their seats and kept talking excitedly. Her mistake was to pause. She looked up just long enough to get her bearings, and the classroom went quiet. Kids stared at her, then whispering began. Someone laughed. Lexi felt her flaws keenly, her thick black eyebrows and crooked teeth and frizzy hair, her lame jeans and lamer sweatshirt. This was the kind of place where every kid got braces at adolescence and a new car at 16. In the back of the room, a girl pointed at her and started to giggle. The girl seated beside her nodded. Lexi thought she heard "nice butterfly," and then, did she make it herself? A boy stood up and the room went quiet again. Lexi knew who he was. Every school had a guy like him. Good-looking, popular, athletic. The kind of boy who got what he wanted without even trying. The football captain and class president. In his aqua blue Abercrombie t-shirt and baggy jeans, he looked like Leonardo DiCaprio, all golden and smiling and sure of himself. He was coming toward her. Why? Was there another, prettier girl behind her? Was he going to do something to humiliate her, to make his friends laugh? "Hey," he said. She could feel everyone looking at them, watching. Lexi bit her lower lip to hide her crooked teeth. "Hey." He smiled. "Susan and Liz are bitches. Don't let them get to you. The butterfly's cool." She stood there like an idiot, dazzled by his smile. Get a grip, Lexi. You've seen good-looking guys before. She should say something. Smile, something. "Here," he said, taking her arm. At his touch, she felt a little jolt, like an electrical charge. He should have moved, led her somewhere. That was why he was touching her arm, right? But he just stood there, staring down at her. His smile faded. She couldn't breathe all of a sudden. The whole world drained away until only his face was left, only his amazing green eyes. He started to say something, but Lexi's heart was pounding so fast she couldn't hear his words, and then he was being pulled away from her, led away by some beautiful girl in a skirt that was smaller than a dinner napkin. Lexi stayed a moment too long, staring at his back, still feeling out of breath. Then she remembered where she was and who she was. The new girl in the bedazzled pink sweatshirt. Tucking her chin into her chest, she bolted forward, made her way to a seat in the back row. She slid onto its slick surface just as the bell rang. As the teacher droned on about the early days of Seattle, Lexi replayed that moment over and over. She told herself it meant nothing, the way he'd touched her, but she couldn't let it go. What had he been going to say to her? When the class ended, she dared to look at him. He moved with the crowd of students, laughing at something the girl in the miniskirt said. At Lexi's desk, he paused, looked down at her, although he didn't smile or stop. He kept moving. Of course he didn't stop. She rose slowly and walked to the door. For the rest of the morning, she tried to hold her head high as she moved through the crowded halls, but by noon, she was lagging, and the worst was yet to come. Lunch in a new school was hell. You never knew what was in and what was out, and the whole social order could be upset if you dared to sit where you weren't supposed to. At the door to the cafeteria, Lexi paused. Just the idea of walking in there, being scrutinized and judged, was more than she could bear today. Normally she was stronger than that, but Mr. Popular had unbalanced her somehow, made her want the impossible, and she knew firsthand how waylaid one could be by longing. It was a waste of time, She walked back outside where the sun was shining. She dug through her backpack, found the lunch Ava had packed for her, and a well-read copy of Jane Eyre. Some kids had stuffed animals or special childhood blankets. Lexi had Jane. She walked idly through campus, looking for a place to sit down and read while she ate her lunch. Across the campus, she spied a pretty little tree growing up from a triangular patch of grass, but it wasn't the tree that caught her attention. It was the girl sitting cross-legged on the grass beneath its green canopy, hunched over a book. Her blonde hair was divided into a pair of loosely twined braids. Dressed in a delicate pink tulle skirt, a black tank top, and black high tops, she definitely made a statement. It was a statement Lexi understood. I'm not like you. I don't need you. Lexi had spent a few years dressed the same way herself, back when she hadn't wanted to make friends, when she'd been afraid of being asked where she lived or what her mama was like. She took a deep breath and walked toward the girl. When she drew near, Lexi paused. She wanted to say the right thing, but now that she was here, she didn't know what that would be. The girl looked up from her book. She was fragile-looking, with acne-blistered skin and green eyes that were rimmed with too much purple eyeliner. Brightly colored rubber bands accented her braces. "Hey," Lexi said. "He's not here, and he's not coming." "Who?" The girl gave a disinterested shrug and went back to reading. "What?" The girl looked up again. "It's social suicide to sit with me. Even the theater kids won't hang with me. Yeah, it's that bad." "You mean I won't make the cheerleading squad? How tragic." The girl looked interested in Lexi for the first time. A smile quirked her mouth. Most girls care about stuff like that. Do they? Lexi dropped her backpack onto the grass. "What are you reading?" "Wuthering Heights." Lexi held out her own book. "Jane Eyre. Can I sit down?" The girl scooted sideways to make room on the small patch of grass. "I haven't read that one. Is it good?" Lexi sat down beside her. "My favorite. When you're done with yours, we could trade." "That would be awesome!" "I'm Mia, by the way." "Lexi. So, what's the book about?" Mia began talking slowly, stumbling over her words, but when she started talking about Heathcliff, she kind of took flight. The next thing Lexi knew, they were laughing as if they'd been friends for years. When the bell rang, they got up and walked toward their lockers together, still talking the whole way across campus. Lexi didn't keep her head down anymore, didn't clamp her books to her chest, or purposely not make eye contact with anyone. Instead, she laughed. Outside the door to her Spanish class, Mia stopped and said in a rush, "You could come to my house after school today. If you wanted to, I mean." She looked nervous as she asked it. "I know you probably won't, no worries." Lexi felt like smiling, only nervousness over her teeth kept her in check. "I would totally like that. Meet me at the flagpole by the admin building, okay?" Lexi went into her classroom and took a seat at the back. She eyed the clock for the rest of the day, willing time to speed up until finally at 2:50, she was at the flagpole waiting. Kids swarmed around her, jostling one another as they made their way onto the buses lined up outside. Maybe Mia wouldn't show. Probably she wouldn't. Lexi was about to give up the whole thing when Mia came up beside her. "You waited," she said, sounding as relieved as Lexi felt. "Come on." Mia led the way through the hive of students toward a shiny black Escalade parked out on the main road. She opened the passenger door and climbed in. Lexi followed her new friend into the leather-scented beige seat. "Hola, madre," Mia said. "This is Lexi. I invited her home with me. Is that okay?" The woman in the driver's seat turned around, and Lexi was stunned by her beauty. Mia's mom looked like Michelle Pfeiffer, with her perfect pale face and sleek blonde hair. In an obviously expensive salmon-colored sweater, she looked like she belonged on the Nordstrom catalog cover. "Hello, Lexi. I'm Jude. It's nice to meet you. And how is it that I don't know you? I just moved here." "Ah, that explains it. Where did you move here from?" "California."
I won't hold that against you, Jude said with a bright smile. Will your mother mind if you're not home right away? No, Lexi said, tensing for the inevitable next question. I could call her, if you'd like. Introduce Mia said. You're doing that thing again. Jude flashed Lexi a smile. I'm embarrassing my daughter, something I am sadly wont to do these days, just by breathing. But I can't hardly stop being a mother, can I? I'm sure your mom is just as embarrassing, right, Lexi? Lexi had no idea what to say to that, but it didn't matter. Jude laughed and went on as if she hadn't asked a thing. I'm supposed to be seen and not heard. Fine. Buckle up, girls. She started up the car, and Mia immediately started talking about a book she'd heard about. They drove away from the school and onto a pretty little main street. The traffic was stop and go all the way through town, but once they made it onto the highway, the road was clear. They followed one curvy, tree-lined two-lane road after another until Jude said, "Home sweet home," and turned onto a gravel driveway. At first, there was nothing but trees on either side of them. Trees so tall and thick they blocked out the sun. But then the road curved again, and they were in a clearing full of sunlight. The house was like something out of a novel. It sat proudly amid its landscaping, a soaring structure made of wood and stone with windows everywhere. Low stone walls delineated magnificent gardens. Behind it all was the blue sound. Even from here, Lexi could hear waves hitting the shore. "Wow!" Lexi said, getting out of the car. She had never been in a house like this before. How should she act? What should she say? She would do the wrong thing for sure, and Mia would laugh at her. Jude slipped an arm around her daughter, and they walked ahead. I bet you girls are hungry. Why don't I make you some quesadillas? You can tell me about the first day of high school. Lexi hung back instinctively. At the front door, Mia looked back. Lexi, you don't want to come in, do you? You've changed your mind? Lexi felt her insecurity dissolve. Or perhaps more accurately, it joined with Mia's and morphed into something else. They were alike. Impossibly, the girl who had nothing was like this girl who had everything. No way, Lexi said, laughing as she hurried toward the door. Inside, she slipped out of her shoes, seeing a second too late that her socks had holes in the toes. Embarrassed, she followed Mia into the magnificent house. There were walls of glass that framed a stunning ocean view, a stone fireplace, gleaming floors. She was afraid to touch anything. Mia grabbed her hand and dragged her into a huge kitchen. There were gleaming copper pots hanging from a black skeletal thing above the 8-burner stove, and fresh flowers in several places around the room. They sat down at a long black granite counter while Jude made quesadillas. She just walked right up to me, Madre, and I told her it was social suicide to sit with me, but she didn't care. Is that cool or what? Jude smiled at that and started to say something, but Mia kept talking. Lexi could hardly keep up with Mia's steady stream of stories. It was as if Mia had been holding observations and thoughts inside of her for years, and now they were coming out. Lexi knew about that, about holding things inside and being afraid and trying to stay quiet. She and Mia compared opinions on high school, boys, classes, movies, tattoos, belly button piercings, and they agreed on everything. The more they agreed on, the more Lexi worried. What would happen when Mia found out about Lexi's past? Would Mia want to be friends with a drug addict's kid? At about 5 o'clock, the front door banged open and a group of kids burst into the house. "Shoes!" Jude yelled from the kitchen without looking up. 9 or 10 kids surged forward, boys and girls. Lexi could tell they were the popular kids. Anyone would have recognized them. Pretty girls in low-rise jeans and midriff-bearing t-shirts, and boys in PIHS blue and yellow sweats. They'd probably come here from football and cheerleader practice. "My bro is the one in the gray sweats," Mia said, leaning closer. "Don't judge him by the company he keeps. Those girls have the brains of breath mints." It was the guy from first period. He peeled away from the crowd with the ease of one who knew how popular he was and sidled up to Mia, putting an arm around her shoulders. The resemblance between them was startling. Mia's face was a feminine, sculpted version of his.
He started to say something to his sister, and then he noticed Lexi. His gaze sharpened, grew so intense that she felt that fluttering start in her chest again. No one had ever looked at her like that before, as if everything about her was interesting. "You're the new girl," he said quietly, pushing the long blonde hair out of his eyes. "She's my friend," Mia said, grinning so wide her braces were a multicolored blur. His smile faded. "I'm Lexi," she said, although he hadn't asked her name. He looked away from her, disinterested. "I'm Zach." A girl in tiny shorts and a midriff-bearing top moved in behind him, draped herself along his side, and whispered something in his ear. He didn't laugh, barely smiled, in fact. Instead, he backed away from Lexi and Mia. "Later, Mimi Mai," he said to his sister. Slinging an arm around Short Short's girl, he led her toward the stairs and disappeared into the crowd of kids running upstairs. Mia frowned at her. "Is something wrong, Lexi? It's okay if I say you're my friend, right?" Lexi stared at the empty place where he'd been, feeling unsettled. He'd smiled at her, hadn't he? At first? For a second? What had she done wrong? "Lexi, is it okay if I tell people we're friends?"
Lexi let out the breath she'd been holding. She forced her attention away from the stairs. Seeing Mia's nervousness, she realized what was important here, and it wasn't a guy like Zach. No wonder he confused her. He would always be incomprehensible to a girl who'd grown up in the weeds. What mattered was Mia and this fragile beginning of their friendship. "Of course," she said, smiling. For once, she didn't care about her teeth. She was pretty sure Mia wouldn't care. "You can tell everyone." The media room was full of kids, as usual. Some women might be overwhelmed by the noise and mayhem, but not Jude. Years ago, back when the twins were starting 6th grade, she'd made a conscious effort to make her house welcoming. She wanted the kids to hang out here. She'd known herself well enough to know that she didn't want to be dropping her kids off into other women's care. She wanted to be the one in charge. To that end, she designed the upstairs carefully, and it had worked. Some days, there were 15 kids here, eating their way through her snack provisions like locusts. But she knew where her children were, and she knew they were safe. Now, as she unlocked the great room's series of wood-framed pocket doors and opened them wide, she could hear movement upstairs. The floors groaned and footsteps thudded through the house. For once, Mia wasn't hiding out from all that horseplay in the media room. She wasn't locked in her bedroom watching The Little Mermaid or Beauty and the Beast or another of her Disney comfort movies. She was out on the beach, sitting on the sandy edge with Lexi beside her. A heavy woolen blanket wrapped them together, black and blonde hair tangled together in the salty air. They'd been sitting out there for hours, talking. Just the sight of it, of her daughter talking to a friend, made Jude smile. She had waited so long for this, hoped for it so fervently, and yet now that it had happened, she couldn't help worrying just a little. Mia was so fragile, so needy. It was too easy to hurt her. And after the thing with Haley, Mia couldn't take another friend's betrayal.
Jude needed to learn a little bit about Lexi, just to know who her daughter was hanging out with. It was a parenting choice that had yielded good results over the years. The more she knew about her kids' lives, the better mother she could be to them. She stepped out onto the patio. The breeze immediately plucked at her hair, whipped strands across her face. Without bothering to step into any of the shoes that lay cluttered outside the door, she walked barefooted across the flagstones, past the collection of dark, woven outdoor furniture. At the edge between the grass and the sand, a giant cedar tree rose tall and straight into the pellucid blue sky. As she approached the girls, she heard Mia say, "I want to try out for the school play, but I know I won't get a part. Sarah and Jolie always get the leads." "I was totally scared to talk to you today," Lexi said. "What if I hadn't? It's no good to be afraid of stuff. You should go for it." Mia turned to Lexi. "Would you come with me to tryouts? The other theater kids, they're so serious. They don't like me." Lexi nodded, her face solemn with understanding. "I'll come, definitely." Jude stopped beside her daughter. "Hey, girls." She put a hand on Mia's slim shoulder. Mia grinned up at her. I'm gonna try out for Once Upon a Mattress. Lexi's gonna come with me. I probably won't get a part, but that's wonderful, Jude said, pleased by this development. Well, I better take Lexi home now. Your dad will be home in an hour. Can I come with? No. You have a paper due on Friday. You might as well get started on it. You're already checking the website? It's the first day of school, Mia said, her shoulders slumping. You need to stay on track. Grades matter in high school. She looked down at Lexi. You ready? I can take the bus. You don't have to drive me. The bus? Jude frowned. In all her years of parenting on this island, she had never had a child make that offer. Most said they could call their moms. None ever offered to take the bus. Where would one even catch a bus around here?
Lexi unwound herself from the red and white striped wool blanket. When she stood up, it slumped to the sand. Really, Mrs. Faraday, you don't need to drive me home. Please, Lexi, call me Jude. When you say Mrs. Faraday, I think of my mother, and that's not a good thing. Mia, go tell Zach I'm starting the drive. Ask him who else needs a ride. 10 minutes later, Jude started up the Escalade. 5 kids shoved their way into the plush interior, talking over one another as they buckled up their seatbelts. In the front passenger seat, Lexi sat quietly, staring straight ahead. Jude admonished Zach and Mia to start on their homework and then drove away. The route was so familiar she could have driven it in her sleep. Left on Beach Drive, right on Night Road, left on the highway. At the top of Viewcrest, she pulled into her best friend's driveway. Here you go, Bryson. Tell Molly we're still on for lunch this week. He mumbled some kind of answer and got out of the car. For the next 20 minutes, she drove the standard route around the island, letting off one kid after another. Finally, she turned to Lexi. Okay, hon, where to? Isn't that a bus stop? She smiled. I am not putting you on a bus. Now, where to, Lexi? Port George, Lexi said. Oh, Jude said, surprised. Most of the kids at Pine High lived on the island, and really, the other side of the bridge was a whole different world. Geographically, only about 300 feet separated Pine Island from Port George, but there were many ways to calculate distance. Port George was where nice, upstanding boys from Pine Island went to buy beer and cigarettes at the mini-mark using fake IDs they made on old magic cards. There was all kinds of trouble in the schools there. She drove out to the highway and headed off the island. Turn there, Lexi said, about a mile from the bridge. In fact, you can let me out here. I can walk the rest of the way. I don't think so. Jude followed the signs to the Chief Sealth Mobile Home Park. From there, Lexi directed her down a winding road to a tiny plot of land overgrown with weeds and grass, where a fading yellow double-wide sat on concrete blocks. The front door was an ugly shade of blue and cracked up the middle, and the curtains inside were ragged and unevenly hemmed. Rust inched like caterpillars along the seams. Deep, muddy ruts in the grass showed where a car was usually parked. Jude parked at the edge of the grass and turned off the engine. This was hardly what she'd expected. Is your mom home? I hate to just drop you off. I'd actually like to meet her. Lexi looked at Jude. My mom died 3 years ago. I live with my Aunt Eva now. Oh, honey, Jude said. She knew how it had felt to lose a parent. Her father had died when Jude was 7. The world had become a dark and frightening place, and for years she'd been unsure of her place in it. I'm so sorry to hear that. I know how difficult it must be for you. Lexi shrugged. How long have you lived with your aunt? 4 days. 4 days? But where were you? Foster care, Lexi said quietly, sighing. My mom was a heroin addict. Sometimes we lived in our car, so I guess you don't want me hanging around with Mia anymore? I understand. Really. I wish my mom had cared who I hung out with. Jude frowned. None of this was what she'd expected. It did worry her, all of it, but she didn't want to be that kind of woman, the kind who judged a person by his or her circumstances. And right now, Lexi looked as beaten as any teenager Jude had ever seen. Everything about the girl radiated defeat. No doubt she'd been disappointed a lot in her life. I'm not like my mom, Lexi said earnestly. The need in the girl's blue eyes was unmistakable. Jude believed her, but still, there was potential danger here. Mia is shy. I'm sure you already know that. She doesn't make friends easily, and she worries too much about being liked. She's always been that way. And last year, she had her heart broken. Not by a boy. It was worse than that. A girl, Haley, befriended her. For a few months, they were inseparable. Mia was as happy as I've ever seen her. But the truth was that Haley had her sights set on Zach, and he fell into her trap. He didn't know how it would upset Mia. Anyway, Haley dumped Mia for Zach, and when Zach lost interest, Haley refused to come to the house anymore. Mia was so hurt she stopped talking for almost a month. I was really worried about her. Why are you telling me this? I guess because if you're going to be her friend, she needs to know she can count on you. I'd like to know that too. I would never do anything to hurt her, Lexi promised.
Jude thought of all the dangers this friendship could pose to her daughter, and all the benefits, and she weighed them, as if this decision were hers to make, although she knew it wasn't. A 14-year-old girl could make her own friends, but Jude could make it easy for Mia and Lexi to stay friends, or difficult. What was best for Mia? When she looked at Lexi, the answer came easily. Jude was a mother, first, last, and always, and her daughter desperately needed a friend. I'm taking Mia into the city on Saturday for manicures, a girls' day. Would you like to join us? I can't, Lexi said. I haven't got a job yet. Money's tight, but thanks. My treat, Jude said easily, and I won't take no for an answer.